Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg, episode 595. Coming up on the big 600, I guess. Not that it really means much. Obviously, playing a little Super Metroid, because it's my go-to game to just not think about. Yeah. So this week on this channel, we had, of course, Dominion 6. We had, of course, solo RPGs. And we have had Ashes, a very, very interesting Doom mod. I've actually had a couple people that I wouldn't really expect comment on my videos featuring some Doom mods. One of them was the guy that made the Warhammer mod for Dominion 6. He actually commented on a Hanging with Mangg episode when I was playing Project Brutality. And then the other one was just the other day from a guy named Biscuit, who commented on one of the Ashes videos. And Biscuit is really cool. He actually he founded TAS videos, tool assisted speedrun videos, and he's done a lot of other stuff. He actually did when we did the Castlevania series playthrough, and I did Simon's Quest. I used a ROM hack that was sort of like the definitive version of Simon's Quest. He actually made that, so he's a known figure. Randomly popped in to say how cool Ashes is, and it is very cool. Yeah, so Ashes, I don't think there's that much left. We will probably be moving on to something new. And what I'd like to move on to, ideally, is Resident Evil Requiem, which came out this week. And I did buy it. I bought it on release because I had heard such good things about it. And I was like, well, I liked Resident Evil 8. It was pretty fun. This one sounds really good. Sounds like it'll be badass, playing as Leon Kennedy and kicking zombie ass. So I bought it. I fired it up. I actually started a Let's Play. I feel like this audio is a little high, but I don't know how to. There's probably a hotkey to lower it, but anyways. Yeah, so I bought it, started up a Let's Play, and got a few minutes in, and then I had to stop. Because, unfortunately, to my great dismay, it's not really working on Linux at the moment. Very specifically, Linux with an NVIDIA 5000 series card. It's causing like severe vertex explosions due to the driver. And apparently NVIDIA's Windows drivers recently also had some problems that they had to sort of resolve or update or something. I don't know. I'm not a Windows guy anymore, so I don't know. But yeah, so supposedly, according to some people, I don't know where they heard this or if there's any truth to the matter, but supposedly the updated drivers for Linux are going to be available like tomorrow or Tuesday or something. That should fix that issue and actually should bring in some changes, some updates in general to the NVIDIA drivers for Linux that should improve performance by like 20% or something. That's what I read somewhere. I don't know. I'm not really that into all the technical details, but needless to say, Requiem, it's technically playable. Someone else commented that, like, hey, if you don't want to wait or if you don't want to dual boot Windows or something, the vertex explosion issue is really only bad in like the first scene because of all the rain, and then if you play past that, it's not nearly as bad. And I was like, I could, but I'm not like that freaking eager, you know. Hold on, it's a little too loud. Let's see. Applications. There you go. There we go. I'm not that eager to dive into it, because I hear it's really scary. I hear it's like the scariest Resident Evil, and it's just crazy scary. So, yeah, we'll get to it. I bought it. We'll play it. It's gonna happen. But apparently you can play in first person or third person if you want, and third person is going to be way less scary, so that's what I'll be playing in. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I've heard good things about it, so. Right, so Dominions, solo RPGs, Ashes, soon Resident Evil Requiem. And then, of course, more Two Brothers Play with Archipelago. Although I think we're hoping to get back to some Dominions pretty soon. We don't like a lot of co-op stuff, but Dominions was good. Well, he likes a lot of co-op stuff. He would be down for playing anything and everything co-op. I'm the issue. Because I can't really tolerate his lack of skill. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, a lot of co-op games are just like fucking platformers, and I have no interest in playing that in general. So you're talking about a non-platforming co-op game. Anything that's like turn-based or something, anything that revolves around me having to wait for him to make a decision is just kind of right the fuck out. That's the biggest issue, and that's why we like Archipelago. We can both keep playing, and yes, I eventually do get BK'd most of the time, and I have to wait for him anyways, but it's not as big of a deal as if we played like Gloomhaven or something. But Dominions, it works out for the most part, especially because I started playing as 2 nations instead of just 1. So I had twice as much to do to his 1 nation. But anyways, I digress. Right. Well, last night we actually we put together a whole new setup for our room. We put in a couple 75-inch TVs, which that was a nice upgrade. We repositioned things. I got a new webcam, the OBS Bot Tiny SE, which cost about $100, and I really recommend it. If I were a tech reviewer, I'd give it a big thumbs up. So far, at least. No issues running it on Linux or anything like that, so it's really solid. Fuck. And I also reconfigured the microphone a bit with easy effects, and I think it sounds pretty good at this point for a Yeti Blue that's in kind of a big open room. Fuck. And yeah, so pretty good stuff. Oh, I also have now finished playing through all the mainline putt-putt games. Every last one. How am I fucking this up this much? And yeah, you know, I think we got it all sorted at this point for putt-putt. So now it's March. I have also watched the movie Cars, which I wasn't that big of a fan of, because I don't like children's movies, like, at all. You know, I'm a horror movie guy, so that's just not my thing. But, you know, it was fine. It was just funny. It's like, I'm watching this film, and it's like, Putt-Putt already did all this stuff years ago. This is a big Putt-Putt ripoff. Hope it was fun playing the putt-putt games. It was fun sort of diving into it and dissecting it and all that, and sort of getting into the wild theories and stuff. But now the real work begins. And I have to write this script. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be quite a bit of work. This is work that I am going to be doing on the side. It is definitely work, you know. Because it is writing, and yeah, it's a funny concept and all that, but it's still work, you know. I'm still trying to maintain a level of kind of quality and professionalism and all that sort of stuff compared to this channel where nothing I do is work. A lot of eyes are going to be on this, and I want it to be good and all that, and I gotta. It's not a summary. It's not someone else's words or anything like that I'm paraphrasing and copying and all that. Like, this is my own shit that I just figured, what the hell, let's do it. Who else is gonna do it? And yeah, we'll see how it comes together. I'm mostly concerned with how long it's gonna be, because I want it to be pretty long. Ideally, this is at least like a 35-40 minute video. And I know that I could sit here in front of a microphone and just sort of rant about putt-putt for an hour at least. And all the different aspects of putt-putt lore. But when I condense it down into a tight script and everything, and don't want to repeat myself at all, no pauses and blah, 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 like that's a lot of content. That's a lot of writing. So we'll see how it comes together. But I have a month to put it together, so we'll see. I figure if anyone can do it, it's me. So, and you know, I just like doing random shit like this. I just like, it was completely out of left field. Just like, yeah, today I'm just gonna do this. Like, you know, my video on the Blair Witch or something. Nobody really expected that, and that ended up being a big hit. Or I was playing Final Fantasy XIV. I was like, someone should just do like a really nice, like, guided playthrough summary of the whole story here. And then I was like, that someone is me. I'm gonna do it. And now it is putt-putt's time. So I can spread the word of how shitty Outback Al is. That is my one mission in life for the month of March. Anyways, over on the Exploring series, we had part 2 of Containment Breach. I really didn't look at any comments for that one. But it did okay. It did as well as any part 2 generally does, you know. Can't complain too much about it. But this week is not a part 2 of anything. This week was more fifthist SCPs. Back to those crazy fifthists. And I made sure this time not to mention Scientology in any way, because I do not want death threats. Am I excited for the anime? Oh, the SCP anime. I think I saw something about that. I didn't watch anything or anything. I mean, I don't watch a lot of anime. I mean, I assume this is just another fan thing, right? So, um, I don't know. I mean, I don't tend to watch almost anything related to SCP. Like, I still never watched Confinement or anything. But I guess, I mean, if it's cool and people seem to like it and stuff, maybe I'll check it out. There are absolutely like SCPs that I would love to see in a visual medium, I guess. But I feel like a lot of the ones I would want are never going to be made in a visual medium. Cuz it's always just like random, it's always just like series 1 stuff or like really little obscure ones that a fan production could do, you know? Like, I don't know, like that one that's like a slide where it sends you underground or something like that. And it's just like, yep, this is something that a cheap independent little YouTube channel could make, you know? Or it's something slightly cooler, but then it's like not an actual SCP, like Overlord or something, where he just kind of made up his own SCP. Like, obviously, I want to see like SCP-6666 as like an anime or something, but that's massive. You know, it's a big production and requires foreknowledge, and you know, like, it's the whole thing. So it's like I understand, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm at, I guess. Right. Next week, I don't know. I don't know what I'm working on. Something. I don't look at the polls, of course, until I have to. So we'll see. The more fifth SCPs, though, that ended up being about an hour long. Pretty lengthy, even though it's only 5 SCPs. I kind of ended up with some decently long ones. And it's a big grab bag of stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of anomalies in that video. So it's got something for everyone. And that's that. That's what that is. Right. RPGs. Wednesday was the start of LEGO's first official Shadow Dark campaign. Wednesday was also the end of LEGO's first official Shadow Dark campaign. It was a friggin' disaster. Probably the worst session I think I've ever experienced. And that's not really his fault. I've had like full sessions that were worse and like more tedious and like I never want to do this ever again. But this was just like an implosion, you know. I've never had a session end that disastrously and suddenly sort of thing. So Lego, he had run Ghostlight, a fifth edition D&D adventure, and it was fine. But it's D&D 5e and blah blah blah, and we were talking, and I was like, well, Shadow Dark's a lot simpler, and you could just run dungeons, and you wouldn't have to really think that much about plots and stories and all that sort of stuff. Have I played Star Sector before? It sounds really familiar. There's definitely a chance that I've checked it out for a little bit, but it doesn't spring to my mind what it is or what it looks like, so obviously not much if I did. Anyways, and everyone was on board with Shadow Dark. We've played it quite a bit. We're all familiar with it. We all like it. It's good. It's a good game. And I figured, it would be a lot simpler for him to just run us through a dungeon. And I was excited to finally play an OSR game. So all good, right? He was pretty sort of quiet about his prep and everything. He didn't really ask me for any advice or questions or anything like that. Which was perhaps a little worrisome. He kind of just kept things close to the vest, but I was still... The one thing is that I was talking to him and I said, well, you should probably run like a mega dungeon. Because that way, you just have the little town, we have the big dungeon, we all know what we're doing every session, we're going back into the mega dungeon. That's it. It's real simple, right? And I suggested several mega dungeons to him that I'm not that familiar with or anything like that. And I said, well, you probably, if I were going to recommend one for you to look at, you should really look at Gunderhofen, which is one I haven't looked at at all, but I've heard nothing but good things about. And it has its own town next to it. I've read one of his other pieces, one of his other little dungeons, and it was really weird and wild stuff that would be a lot of fun. So I recommended Gunderhofen. And he was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go with Gunderhofen. And I was... Yes, this is going to be good. It's going to be good fun. Then, towards the start of the session, he mentioned something about the town of Moriu, which I know is from Terra Invictus, which was a sort of hex crawl that we played a little bit on stream together. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure why he's bringing in Terra Invictus at all, considering... The mega dungeon is basically the whole campaign. You do the mega dungeon and that's it. And Gunderhofen has its own little town with like NPCs and little side quests, and it's all fleshed out already. You don't really have to do anything else. Like the only document he really needs to look at is Gunderhofen. So I don't know why. I mean, it's like if he wants to set it in Terra Invictus, it's not a terrible idea to have like an existing world out there beyond the mega dungeon if we want to like go to a bigger city briefly or something like that. It's like, okay, it's fine, but other than that, I would stick with what's in Gunderhofen. Anyways, the session comes to a start, and I ask him if this campaign has a name. And I expected him to just say, like, no, not really. We'll just call it Gunderhofen or something. But no, he says it's the Darkness of Moriu. I'm like, okay. But it does involve Gunderhofen, right? Because I wanted to put it in the description. And he's like, yeah, it does. Yeah, okay. And so he starts it, and he gives us the opener, which is fine. I mean, I told him originally when he was planning the session, like, really, for the first one, you can just start us at the dungeon. Like, start us at the entrance of the dungeon. You don't have to set up a town or anything until afterwards. But, no, he went into this thing that we are part of this adventuring guild. It's an existing guild. We don't get to name it or anything. It's not just the four. It's a whole guild that we're a part of called the Argent Pathfinders. And we were sent to this town of Moriu because they've been raided by goblins recently. Okay, very, very bog standard. The most bog standard of adventuring starts there outside of you're all in a tavern. And so we approach the town and we're talking to the sergeant at the front of the town, and we ask, I ask him some questions about, happenings with these goblins and what they know about it and all this sort of stuff and blah blah blah. And it's all going okay, and I'm writing notes and blah blah blah. And then mid conversation, we start to hear screams coming from somewhere in the town and shouts that the goblins are raiding. And this is where I was already like, I don't think Lego really got the memo here. This is basically a 5e adventure that I'm listening to now. Because we're talking to a sergeant of the guard, and we're told that this town is a population of 1,500. So a goblin raid on a town of this size really is just completely illogical, nonsensical. And if there are enough goblins being fielded, like this is an army of goblins that will take on a town of 1,500 humans without, without much concern about it. Us 4 adventurers at level 1 with like 5 hit points, we're not taking that on. And so this is like this complete disconnect where there's no logic to anything happening here, and it's just like, okay, Lego is not a very bright man. All right, let's just get that out of the way. Let's just acknowledge that. All right, I mean he's not the highest of IQ, and that's fine. I love the bastard and all that, but that's what it is. You don't have to be that bright to run a D&D campaign or anything like that. But I would say that if you're not that creative and you're not that bright, your best solution is probably running just a pre-written thing. And there are lots of pre-written things out there. This is why I suggested to him that he just run Gunderholfen. It's a big dungeon. All he has to do is run it as a dungeon, and that's it. Or if he wanted to run something very narrative and character focused and all that, there's a lot of Pathfinder adventure paths or D&D 5e pre-written adventures and campaigns that you can just look at the words and run it as it's written. Lego decided not to do either of those options, however, because he opts for the worst option, in my opinion. And that's using ChatGPT. Lego loves ChatGPT, despite my pretty non-stop ridiculing of him for doing so, and constant reminders of the various articles that have been written about how using it just makes you dumber. And so now that he is a DM, he has decided that his best bet for DMing is just making a campaign by himself, quotation marks, and using ChatGPT to help him. Except the actual percentage of how much ChatGPT is contributing to this is probably a lot higher than he makes it sound. So you have then an adventure written by a language model that has no real understanding of logic or how things would work, or that goblins, a group of 10 goblins wouldn't raid a town of 1,500 people. And you don't have a DM that's going to push back against that and think about it himself. He's just going to be like, oh yeah, goblins, level 1 D&D, they fight goblins. So let's have a goblin raid and they have to rush off and fight the goblins. And so that led my character being like, well, we're level 1 fucking adventurers, and we just arrived in town because we heard there were some goblin raids in the area. But if the goblins are coming out in such force to be able to threaten a town of 1,500 with an active guard, there is absolutely nothing we can do. So we're just going to head to the tavern and wait for all this to blow over. And if it turns out that the goblins basically take over the town and this is the end of Moriu because we didn't assist, then we're getting the fuck out of Dodge because there was no way that we could have handled that anyways. Which sounds logical, right? And so everyone else was like, okay, they all expected, I'm sure, for us to just be like, oh, well, we rush off to help because we're heroes. And if this were D&D 5th edition, if this were Pathfinder, if this were Draw Steel or 13th Age or something like that, where you're big epic heroes, yeah, probably that's what we would have just done. But this is fucking Shadowdark. We have like 4 hit points. We're designed to be very careful and cunning and not rush headlong into battle. So, yeah, this seems like pure isekai bullshit. Yeah, it was definitely pure bullshit. No doubt about it. So we're in the tavern. And like it was like, okay, what do you do? And we're just like, well, we just wait. And like I was like, okay, well, as you're waiting, the screams start to sound like they're coming closer, and you hear sounds out in the street and stuff. And I'm like, okay, they made it all the way into the heart of town already. That's quite remarkable. But I had a spell. I'm playing a wizard, so I had a spell called Wall of Smoke that lasts for like 10 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna cast Wall of Smoke and put it like right in front of the door and covering the windows and stuff like that. So it looks like this building is just filled with smoke. And I cast it successfully, and there was a big wall of smoke and everything. And then Lego says that at the back door of the tavern, we hear like a scratching sound. So my mom's character goes back there, and it sounds like a big dog or a wolf is scratching at the door. And I'm like, okay, well, it'll take a very long time for a wolf to scratch through the door there, so that's not really a big problem. And then he's like, what do you do? And they're like, well, we wait. And we're just kind of quiet and we're waiting. Then he says that we hear the sound of a crowbar being put into the door frame, the front door. And I'm like, okay, these goblins have to be like... I don't know. Like, they have to be like mind controlled or something. They have to be controlled by someone because this is insanity. But we just kind of wait, And then he says that a couple goblins, the door bursts open from the crowbar at the same time that a few goblins jump through the front windows into the tavern. And at this point, I'm like, this is fucking ludicrous. They have to be controlled by some other entity or something. For goblins, known for their cowardice, to get into the heart of a town, find a random tavern that looks like it's filled with smoke, and burst through the glass windows at the front. Also, as a side note, I think while we were waiting in the tavern, or when we were on our way to the tavern, or something like that, uh, he mentioned that during the start of the raid, we see one of the like granaries or one of the food silos or something has caught fire. Like they attacked one of the granaries. And I'm like, okay, why the fuck would goblins raiding a town attack the food supply of the town? Like that would, I would think that would be the whole reason they're attacking the town, would be the food supply. But anyways, so goblins burst through the windows. The wolf then bursts through the back door. It just charges through for some reason, and we get into a big fight. And we do the fight, and I'm obviously fairly sullen at this point. But we do the fight, we win. There's no casualties or anything. And afterwards, Lego's like, okay, they're dead. What do you do? And this is when I said, well, it doesn't matter what we do, because the DM is just going to tell us what's going to happen to us, because we have no agency. This caused, and you can watch the stream if you really want to see, this caused Lego to completely flip out and lose it, and start ranting and raving that he's fucking done with this. What the fuck am I talking about, that we have no agency? Because if we had gone to the farm, there would have been goblins there, and because we didn't go to the farm, a child is dead. And it's like, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not agency. Like, yeah, so he just flipped out and he left the table, and that was it. And so, that was only like an hour or so into the night, so I had to kind of salvage things, and I just quickly DM'd this tiny little Shadow Dark one-shot for the others using their characters that they had, just so they had something to play. Yeah, it was rough, because he thought he was completely, in the right, that he had prepped all this stuff and done all this work with ChatGPT to create this adventure. And, he said that he's like ranting that I'm not going to DM a campaign that's just random numbers, and you're going to go into a dungeon, and I just have to sit here as you die. And it's like, that's what it is. Yeah, I mean, that's what Shadow Dark is typically. That's what kind of old school dungeon play is. You're the referee sort of thing. You're the judge. And I believe that I'm completely right, which I am. I mean, let's not kid around here. In that was terrible, right? That was fucking atrocious. The funny thing is, of course, that my family didn't really think anything of it, and they thought that I was the bad guy. They thought that I was an asshole because I couldn't just let him DM, and they thought it was perfectly fine and everything. Because they don't care or know one way or the other about either whatever they're playing. They barely know the rules of any game they're playing. They just kind of follow along and do whatever. But yeah, I mean, needless to say, that campaign was destined to fail, right? Because if he had got us into the dungeon, he was absolutely going to start like fudging things, and fudging numbers and encounters and whatever, so that we didn't die. In which case, there's no stakes whatsoever. And then it's like, running a mega dungeon, it's not about plots really or characters or anything. It's about the dungeon and the factions within the dungeon and the interplay between the factions and all that. And a lot of that is going to just come down to like at the table moments, and like reaction rolls and stuff like that. And he's not going to be able to really use ChatGPT to help him with that kind of thing. And that's the biggest problem with him using ChatGPT. It's one thing to sort of use it to help you flesh out some ideas and maybe have something to like kind of bounce off of, but he's using it to like create plots and create descriptions of rooms and his openings and whatever. And when you do that, and then during you play during the session, you're not going to have ChatGPT there. I really hope not. you know so when a situation comes up, which it always will, no matter who you're running things for or what kind of game you're running, situations will come up that you just did not account for. um then you have to rely on your own mind, and which is now handicapped because you're fucking language model brained. And so you just you're not going to be able to think of it as much. Anyways, um so like I just, yeah, I mean, I could not keep silent. I could not just let him DM or anything like that, because I knew that I was not going to like enjoy at all playing in a campaign like that, because he's obviously severely misunderstood Shadow Dark and old school play and so on and so forth. And I said, like, the others in the group would probably be perfectly fine and have no issues with this. They would have charged in, they would have fought the goblins, they wouldn't have thought anything about it, and be like, yeah, fighting goblins. And they would have loved like the funny voices he put on or anything, and it was just like, yeah, this is great. um and and I said, like, well, I could step out and you guys could play this and it would be you'd have a lot of fun, but they refused to play without me. Because they don't know what the hell they're doing, and they don't know any of the rules, because none of them have ever read a single RPG rulebook or even looked at one. Um, and so it was like, okay, Lego was talking about how he didn't want to DM anymore, and he didn't want to play anymore. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, if he doesn't want to play anymore, that might be kind of the end of our RPG group, because the others just aren't capable. And at least Lego knows the rules and can keep it in his head and stuff. I don't know if this is a sensitive question, but have you ever heard of the RPC Authority? Yes, I've heard of it. I've never read any of the articles on that site, and I think that whole Splinter and all that drama that happened, I think that sort of predates exploring the SCP Foundation. I wasn't really super into SCP at the time, so I don't really know a whole lot about it. Yeah, I mean, it's not a topic that comes up that often. It's not like they're a real rival for the SCP Foundation, and I don't really have much interest in making any videos on the articles because there's thousands of SCPs that I haven't covered. Right. So, but my mom talked to him and all that, and he and I talked the next day or something like that, and he not only was still willing to play, he was actually still willing to DM, because I had said to him the previous night, like, what I don't understand is, like, it's fine to be a DM that doesn't want to do like old school OSR dungeon play, 4 hit points, you might die to just a random goblin short sword in the first combat of the game sort of thing, and life is cheap, and the DM is meant to be this completely neutral arbiter of the rules. Like, it's fine. Not every person is going to be into that. I get that completely. What I don't understand is if he's not interested in that and he's interested in running like big epic plots with big heroes and saving maidens and fighting goblins and all that sort of stuff. Um, why on earth did he switch over to Shadow Dark? That's the one thing I don't get. And why did he entertain all this talk about like Gunderholfen and mega dungeons and so on and so forth, and want to incorporate axe rules and shit like that? It's like none of what none of Shadow Dark or what I've incorporated from axe is in favor of that kind of epic hero game. So we were talking a little bit more, and I was like, well, yeah, if you want to run a game like that, you should stick with, D&D 5e or Draw Steel or 13th Age or Nimble or something, something like that. And he clicked on to 13th Age. He thought that would be pretty good because it's pretty loose, it's pretty narrative. There's montages, your big epic heroes from the start kind of thing. It's a fun system. It's not as sort of tactical and combat kind of focused as Draw Steel. It's a little bit simpler to grok for the others. And so he was like, yeah, I could run a 13th Age campaign. I was like, okay, well, I'm on board with that. I have no problem with that. I want to play 13th Age, and I don't mind being a big fuck you hero sort of thing. But the whole issue was playing Shadow Dark, playing an old school RPG where I have 4 hit points and all this sort of stuff, and you expecting me to charge into a combat with a bunch of goblins raiding a town at the start of the campaign. Like I have no, and it was like I was initially like, okay, I mean, I don't like that he's having goblins raid a town and this is an opening to a campaign rather than we're at the start of a dungeon, but okay, I'm just going to hide out in the tavern because that's the smart, safe, correct thing to do in this case. What really pissed me off was when he has goblins fucking jumping through the windows just to kill us for no reason whatsoever, beyond all logic. That's where I was like, okay, then this cannot continue. Whereas if he had run that same exact scenario with, say, 13th Age or Draw Steel or something, it'd be like, all right, well, we're big fuck you heroes, so let's charge in, find these goblins, and put them to the sword. And it's like, I wouldn't question it as much. It still would probably be on my mind of like, what the hell's up with these goblins? But I think that's, no matter what, it's always going to be a problem. Until ChatGPT evolves to this higher form of intellect that can actually think about logic that way, I don't think LEGO will ever think about logic that way. Which is why I kind of strongly recommend that he run something pre-written, which generally should be, hopefully, a bit more logical than that. But not necessarily. I mean, one of the I know one of the big Pathfinder adventure paths starts with like goblins raiding a town, right? And like interrupting a festival or something in the middle of it. So it's like, yeah. I guess I basically have to turn off my game. 13th Age especially is kind of like a beer and pretzels game. I just have to sort of turn off that logical part of my brain a little bit and just be like, fuck it, we're heroes. There's going to be conflict no matter where we go or what we do. Let's just do it. Like, I have to try to embrace that while still having fun with the whole thing. So, yeah, and, you started to talk about 13th Age, and I was like, okay, well, I have a feeling that it might take you a little bit more time than next week to have a campaign ready to go. So I offered to run a one-shot this coming week to help him, get back into 13th Age and give him a little bit more time. So I started looking into it and looking at various one-shots and various things like that. And I'm going to run a one-shot from Kobold Press. Something about Volun's Glory or something like. Basically, we're just chasing down this MacGuffin magical item uh, from this wrecked airship that these dwarves were sort of absconding with. And it's just a handful of fights. There's not a whole lot of sandboxiness to it or anything like that. But it'll get us back into the rules of how to run combat. Because my family, the one thing they're kind of getting a little miffed about is the constantly changing systems. Because they don't read any rule books, and they really struggle with like remembering which dice to roll, how certain things function across different rule systems. And yeah, I understand. It's not great. The problem is I'm very like fickle, and I constantly like to change things. So we're hoping that if Lego DMs and he gets into a groove of it or something, he might actually stick with it for a good while. And I won't be inclined to just be like, let's end this campaign and move on to something different, because I'm not the DM. Lego's far more capable of sticking with something for an extended period of time, and so are the others. So, you know, we'll see. And then I was looking at like pre-written campaigns for 13th Age, and there's Eyes of the Stone Thief, but I don't know. I tried looking at that a while back, and it seemed pretty confusing. And it's a living dungeon, and it's just like, I think it's a little too high concept for Lego's first kind of campaign. So there's another one that I sent him called, I don't know, Shards of a something Shards of the Broken Sky. It's a full level 1 to 10 campaign for 13th Age First Edition. And he's like, oh, well, I could start with that. And I'm like, okay, I mean, it's a full campaign, but sure. And last night he said, yeah, he's going to go with Shards. And he's basically just going to like start with that, run through sort of the first part of it. And then if he wants to spin off to do something on his own, he can. Otherwise, he can just keep running it as is. Overall, I think this is the best approach. He doesn't have to then come up with his own he doesn't have to come up with his own world. He doesn't have to come up with his own plots. I don't have to suffer through ChatGPT making up just ridiculous situations. It's a pre-written campaign that I've heard some decent things about, so should be pretty good. I kind of hope he just sticks with it, because it's probably a good time. The combats are all balanced. He doesn't have to make up his own combats, because I'm sure ChatGPT does not have a good grasp of 13th Age combat balance. And yeah, should be a pretty good time. So yeah, it was the most disastrous session I've ever experienced, but hopefully out of it comes something good. And I am looking forward to playing 13th Age, and I think it should be fun. I'm going to be playing sort of a charismatic dwarf wizard, and yeah, I think it'll be a pretty good time. Hopefully. I don't think he'll be a bad DM. I just think he has confidence issues, and he really needs to not rely on ChatGPT much. But I don't have much hope for that issue, so we'll see how it goes. So yeah, we'll do a one-shot of 13th Age this Wednesday, and then the following week, presumably, we will be starting a campaign. Right. That's about it then. We got more Dominions. We got more solo RPGs. We got more Ashes, and then hopefully Resident Evil Requiem this week. And over on the Exploring series, more Fifthist SCPs. Okay. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. And I'll see you fine folks next week.